red pen. Alright. So, let's get started on the study guide for next Monday. Let me see where I've got. There we go. Oh! Oh, for God's sake. Fine, go over there. Okay. So, let's start with 30 Years' War. I just gave it away. Single conflict set the stage for changes in Europe. Consolidation of royal power, reason and logic of religion, even to small and large revolutions. And the name of the war was, as I just said, 30 Years' War. So I got ahead of myself. Normally you guys would be answering this. This was the conflict that started many changes in Europe. Also, it's the main war we talk about for this chapter. Let's see. In Bohemia, passionate Protestants tossed two Catholic officials out of a window and into a dung heap. What is the name of the event? Prague, yes. You got defenestration. They are. Yeah, I mean, they're German and French and Dutch. Yeah, not exactly the easiest, some of them. But hey, do your best. And I should know what you're talking about. After besieging Vienna, the Protestants were pushed back to Prague. 24 were executed, which the Protestants used as propaganda against the Catholics. What was this event called? This execution of 24 Protestants after a retreat, which is usually not supposed to happen. Yes, the Blood Court. What Protestant city was slaughtered by a Catholic mercenary army in 1631, leaving only 425 out of 20,000 civilians left alive? This was a Protestant city slaughtered by a mercenary army. This specifically left only 425 out of the initial 20,000 population. Say that again? What? Yeah, Magdeburg. Y'all were both close. Magdeburg. Specifically, it was a siege, and then once the siege was successful, they just murdered everybody. Let's see. The slaughter at Magdeburg spurred Sweden into action. Bankrolled by France, what was the name of the brilliant and charismatic Swedish king who turned the tide of the war in its most dire hour? Yes, Gustavus Adolphus. Again, the Swedish people really like this guy. Okay. Despite all of this, the Catholics were again on top by 1632. What country entered the conflict on the side of the Protestants, and whose inclusion created a wave of atrocities across Central Europe? Yes, the French got involved, and it's not that there weren't atrocities before, it's just that there were so many more troops on the battlefield now and roaming around Europe that the atrocities got significantly worse after France got involved. Okay, so to wrap this up, after decades of fighting, Europe was ready for a break. What was the name of the treaty that put an end to the 30 Years' War? Yes, this ended the 30 Years' War. Yes, the Peace of Westphalia. Phalia. That was the treaty that ended the war. That's the last thing on this particular section, yep. Alright. Let's see. So despite all this, there's still culture in Europe. Who was the famous English playwright who revolutionized theater by talking about contemporary political problems and themes rather than classical or biblical stories? Shakespeare. Shakespeare. Again, his big thing is just that he was actually doing something different. After centuries, that was revolutionary. All right. Miguel de Cervantes criticized Spain's pretentious nobility, who all thought themselves as conquistadors. What was the name of his dim-witted literary hero who symbolized this attempt at heroics? So, Miguel Cervantes wrote what? Cervantes. Cervantes. He was the author. Mm-hmm. Don Quixote. It's okay. I heard it said before I ever saw how it was spelled. Let's see. Oi. Um, Catholics enjoyed bright, expressive colors in their paintings, while Protestants typically preferred somber color palettes. What Protestant Dutch painter was well known for his use of light and dark? We talk about a number of Dutch painters. This is by far the most famous one. Not Vermeer. Yes, Rembrandt. Rembrandt Van Ryn. One more bit of culture here before we move along. Um, which two biblical figures, usually seen as getting their just punishments, were seen as sympathetic figures and indeed even victims in John Milton's Paradise Lost? Yes. Adam and Satan were, again, John Milton didn't intend them to be sympathetic. He was like, oh, God is cruel and that's a good thing. And most readers are like, I don't know. Because Milton was a Puritan, so he was into that. All right, on to France. Um. Who was the chief minister of Louis XIII who levied new taxes without consulting the Estates General? Which was technically illegal, but who listens to laws anymore, right? Without the approval of the Estates General, or without even consulting the Estates General. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a lot of cardinals though. That's just a title. Yes. Yes. Cardinal Richelieu. E-L. There. Again, it's French. What can you do? Having grown up in a time of civil war, who became the first real absolutist ruler of France, going so far as to call himself the Sun King? Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you remember which one? Because there were a lot of Louis. No. We just had the 13th. We just had the 13th. 14th. No, heaven forbid they move numbers around willy-nilly. they at least go in order. Yeah, Louis XIV was by far the most powerful king France ever had. But he's very overshadowed because within a couple of more kings we get Napoleon and nobody cares about the kings after that. So yeah. Louis XIV. Speaking of Louis, after bringing New France in as an official province, adding rich Caribbean islands, what great palace did Louis XIV build outside of Paris? Excuse me. Good enough. It's Versailles because it's French and you don't pronounce half of it. We borrow so much from them, yeah. Not wrong. Yeah. Terror's weird. Um, let's see. Oh, one more thing here for France. Um, from 1672 on, France was in near constant war with its neighbors. What two important Germanic provinces were taken which would cause issues for another 2.5 centuries. I say important provinces, they were important in that France and Germany have been fighting each other over them for 250 years. That's one of them. Yes, Alsace and Lorraine. I'm so not used to. You've got me completely mixed up doing the Lorraine verse. Alsace and Lorraine. All right. That one is also multiple choice. I just found a bunch of pairs of Germanic provinces on the border of France to put in as the other questions or the other answers. All right. So, beginning with Frederick William the Elector of Brandenburg, there was a tradition of powerful, well-trained army by the time of his grandson Frederick the First, because as I say here, we just got a bunch of Fredericks. This was consolidated. This consolidated state of Germanic principalities broke off from the Holy Roman Empire and became what kingdom? What kingdom did the Fredericks create? Short is the short version. Yes. We got Prussia out of it. It will have consequences. It will have so many consequences. All right. That is a later thing, isn't it? Uh, Maybe I should have had this. No? I'll get to that in a minute, I guess. Okay. Oh no, this is gonna have to go first. All right, we're just gonna stick this here. It's not doesn't have anything to do with Prussia, but it's not also not like a specific country. So, when the last Spanish Habsburg king died, the throne passed to a Bourbon. What conflict had England, Austria, and the Dutch working to keep a French-Spanish unification from happening? So this was France and Spain versus everybody else because there was the threat of France and Spain unifying. Fighting against the French and Spanish to keep them from unifying. War of Spanish what? Yes. War of Spanish Succession. Again, this is just another like Spain is still there, but just kind of a piece on a field on the board as opposed to like a major power. All right. Anyway, back to Russia. Despite the rather brutal handling of the boyars, foreigners, villagers, and everybody, what man helped to modernize Russia, becoming its first czar, and even created a representative body, the Zemsky Sobor? So this was the Russian ruler who murdered a lot of people, but also at least began the modernization of Russia. Yes. Do you recall his number? That's totally fine. Do you recall his moniker? Four. Yes, his father was the third. So this is Ivan the Fourth, but I also accept Ivan the Terrible because he was known as Ivan the Terrible. For some reason, yeah, it has stuck with me over the years as well. Good, good, good education there, YouTube. Better than. Oh, well, there you go. Yes. Let me see. Right. After a time of troubles, after Ivan died, what great ruler rose to power, truly got Russia modernized, just in time to save Russia from defeat at the hands of the Swedes in the Great Northern War? Yes, correct. Do you remember which Peter this was, by chance? You want to guess? It's not super important, but I just like to see if you guys can guess it or can put which Peter this was, because Peter the Great is correct, but he still had a number. He was Peter the First. Yes, he's Peter the First, also known as Peter the Great. So again, I would totally accept Peter the Great. He was mostly known as Peter the Great, as opposed to Peter the First. I mean, when you get that moniker, you tend to stick with it. Yes, which again, totally fine. Well, these are short answers, so you write it in for me. So you're more than welcome to give that. Um, What was the name of the system that Peter the Great created, which eliminated nobility, forcing them to actually work for the government to hold an office? This was a system that Peter the Great put in or put together for Russia. Um, it essentially eliminated the nobility and had made them actually work in order for them to hold an office. Yes, table of ranks. That was a early form of meritocracy where you got a job based on your skill, which was revolutionary. As opposed to like who you were born to. A quick yes, yes. Well, because like back in the Middle Ages, it was the people who fought with the king, so they got land and title as thanks for fighting, and then their children's and children's children were worthless. You can't pass on skill. It doesn't work that way. Were you gonna say something? Okay. Okay. No, just making sure. Mm-hmm. Some of that is genetic. Yeah. Sometimes I mean, you have you'll have whole families, whole lineages of people who are just like good runners or good at swimming or yeah. But also, there's definitely if you're born into a family of runners, you're gonna probably train from an early age, so you already kind of have that advantage. There's a little bit to be said for genetics, but like you're not going to be born knowing how to do statescraft. And now again, granted, you would be certainly in the place to learn that, but if for the last 400 years your family's been completely lazy and not worrying about it, you're not going to bust your ass trying to learn politics and stuff. So yeah. Mm. You just don't wear them? Yep.
Both my parents wear glasses. I think my brother just refuses to go get glasses. He said he has issues with seeing, and he hasn't started to ask, but how do we get like a amount of money from the insurance if we get glasses?
Yeah.
He's starting to realize he might get glasses for his college costs.
Yep. It's very helpful being able to
The
see the
only
board.
reason I got mine was because I'd be sitting in math class. I could not read nothing on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think two blind people that come together can ever have children in love?
Depends on which type of blindness.
Yeah, certain blindnesses.
I think it's stabbed in the eyes. Yeah, that's the,
Well, not that, but there are certain genetic
yeah,
blindness that is like recessive. So they could two blind people could still have a child that could see, assuming their entire families weren't also blind. In which case, that's not recessive anymore.
someone with dwarfism can have a baby.
Yeah.
And someone that's normal can also have a dwarf baby.
Right.
I'm sorry, let's get
You aren't putting them down.
That's the kind of response I'd expect from you. Okay. Quick thing with Sweden. Who is the young, charismatic, and brilliant Swedish king who very nearly defeated Russia at the start of the Great Northern War, only to push his country to near bankruptcy with his constant warfare? He was a Charles. Yes, Charles the 12th. Yes. Now, this one is multiple choice since he doesn't have a moniker. So as long as you know it's Charles, you're fine. I don't have 4 Charleses up there with different numbers. I wouldn't do that to you guys. No. Yeah, I'm not about that. It's less red ink for me to use too if you guys do well. I do. I have. I apparently was watching Legend of Korra while doing this one because there's a character on here from Legend of Korra. So, on to England. So England had a whole thing. Let's see, do I have that in? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Who led the parliamentary forces against Charles I in the English Civil War? Charles I. He was leading the parliamentarians against the royalists. And he ruled England for a little while. Well, I mean, for the rest of his life afterwards, but not as a king. Yes. This was the English Civil War. Oliver who? Yes.
Have you had a class full, like, you know that last class probably like a year ago? Have you had a class that's full?
Oh, I've had.
The 101 and 102 classes are usually pretty cool. It's just that most people start their senior year, so they don't get.
Yeah, I've had completely full classes. But yeah, I mean, when I first started here back in like 2019, we were using the classes in the hallway and there was not room. Those were smaller. That's why we moved here. I mean, even the 101 and 102 has been kind of sparse this last year or so. So yeah, fingers crossed. Oh, we get the enrollment back up. Right, back to the English Civil War. And so we're just going to skip a bunch of back and forth to the end of things. What was the name of the event in which William of Orange and Mary were invited to England as co-monarchs in order to oust the Catholic James II? It wasn't actually a revolution. Well, it was a revolution, sorry. But it had a specific name because it wasn't violent. Yes. William of Orange and Mary. She did technically have a title. The Glorious Revolution. So called because they didn't burn down London over it. Granted, a lot of Irish still died, but for the English, that's a Tuesday. Look, Philadelphia works on a different set of laws. All right, on to chapter 15. Okay, at the top of the 30 estates was the monarch. Along with statecraft, what pastime was the king expected to partake in by his subjects? What was the main pastime for kings during this period? Yes, or what they were supposed to be doing. Yes, they loved hunting. That was just like an expectation. Like how today it's like, oh yeah, old white men go golfing. They didn't want other people doing. Well, other regular folks couldn't really go on the kind of hunts the king would.
Was there something like there was tax that they were near the woods?
Yeah, there was certain like enclosure laws and stuff to keep peasants out of woods. Because, peasants can't have anything. Okay, the estates. Who were the first estate? The clergy. Who were the second estate? Go ahead and fill these out while you guys are thinking. And this also goes back, yes, the nobility. I was going to say this also goes back to, the Middle Ages, where the second estate was the nobility, which at the time were like the knights and whatnot. And who were the third estate? Oops. Oh yeah, I already read that. Everybody else. 95 to 98% of the population was the third estate. Okay. Let's see. Right. Going into towns and whatnot, was a name for the groups of artisans who came together in towns to set prices and essentially enforce a monopoly on certain goods. These were artisans that came together and ran certain businesses. And by businesses, I mean industries. The entire, if you wanted to go to a shoe store in a town, you had the guilds, yes. And the guilds expanded beyond just artisans, but that's what they're mainly known for. Yes. Yes. Guilds are important. Help you make a lot of money. Before we get to the whole free trade thing, what was the name of the proto-industrial practice of cloth making, which allowed peasant women to actually break into the markets once held only by large businesses? Of cloth making. It was typically done by peasants. Yes. The cottage industry, because it was done out of cottages. I'm just going to get something I can throw across the room and activate that thing. Compared to peasants, what poor rural farmers were tied to the land and actually were bought and sold along with it? They're bought and sold along with the land. They were tied to the land. Serfs. Good old feudalism. All right. Let's. Okay. What was the name of the system that the old regimes put into place to protect their own markets and profit margins against other countries and free trade? This was a system the old regimes used to protect their profits. Yes, mercantilism. IO? Yes. It's merchants without the H. Mercantilism. At least that's what I see. I don't know. And what illicit business flourished thanks to mercantilism and allowed many men, such as John Hancock, to make a lot of money avoiding tariffs. They weren't stealing per se. They were paying for the goods, just not the tariffs. Yes. Like you're describing it exactly, you just need the word. Smuggling. Yes. Very good. All right, on to the 7 Years' War, which again I refuse to call the French and Indian War because that was a local version of it and also a terrible name. I'll just go ahead and read this one out because I don't know where my brain was when I wrote it almost 10 years ago now. What European leader had the stones to go up against both Austria and Russia in the 7 Years' War? So who was the European leader that fought Austria and Russia? Yes. You remember which Frederick that was? I was going to say, I'll give you a hint. It was a pretty big deal. Yes. I think it might have been Frederick II. This was multiple choice, so you only need to know Frederick, right? The other one, it doesn't matter. Okay. Meanwhile, what country gained a substantial amount of land in North America as well as several important trade posts in India after the 7 Years' War? Yes, the British won so much land in this war. They got basically all of Canada. I mean, they got all of Canada. And it's technically they got trade posts, but they were more like beachheads for the eventual invasion and conquering of India. So it was a pretty big deal. So, along with England, France, Austria, and Russia, what up-and-coming country became known as a great power after the 7 Years' War? Prussia. Because Prussia, who, again, ruled by Frederick the Great, did really well in that war, managed to hold its own, and became known as a great power. People make a lot of money on wars. I mean, there's already several.
There has been a few instances of battles where literally the leaders didn't want to lose their men, so it was the leader versus their leader.
Yeah. Doesn't happen super often, but yeah, you'll occasionally get like, all right, we'll have these two guys fight, and whoever wins, that's maybe. I mean, China's pushing for Taiwan, and technically we're supposed to protect them, but I don't know, not anymore. Yeah, it expired with the rest of our country. Um, uh, actually, there were some events during the um, Renaissance where that kind of happened. Did I tell you guys about the mercenaries, the mercenary leaders who had their soldiers fake fight for like years so that both sides could get paid, but nobody died? And then there was another event. I think it was the French sent a detachment into Italian lands. Again, it wasn't Italy at the time. This was way back when. They sent in, I want to say, like 50 men and came back with 51 because there was like an Italian guy there that was like, I want to join up with you guys. So he just followed them back home. That's a detachment you want to be a part of. Nobody dies and you get an extra dude. So yeah, there are definitely some times in the past where like it wasn't just people murdering each other in the fields. Minor scuffle, millions dead. Yeah, the river flooded slightly, millions dead, caused an uprising, millions more dead. Yeah, yeah. Trench foot. Yeah, that makes sense. We're definitely gonna read about soldiers no longer having shoes coming back from Russia in the cold because they had to eat their shoes. Yeah, their shoes were made out of leather, and leather is technically edible because they were completely out of food. It is technically edible. You can get a little bit out of it. It's animal skin. Mm, mm. I was gonna say actually, yeah. I was thinking about that. A lot of famines. Yeah, dirt is largely organic because so much of it is like broken down. Yeah, yeah.
Where is that place where like the starvation is so like they have no food that nobody can do it, and even if the president sent a lot of food, they will still die to eat the food. What's that place? It's probably confused. You know what I'm talking about? Because like it's like they're dying, like their starvation like level 5.
Hmm.
And
I'm not
like
sure.
even if they get food, even if they help them,
They're too far gone.
they're too far gone. Like they will try to eat the food that's given to them, but they will die.
Hmm. Yeah, it has to be like a yeah, because your body is consuming itself trying to survive. I'm not sure where that would be. I mean, yeah,
Wait,
or
wait, I got one more thing to say.
yes.
There's I seen a TikTok too that there was like the people in Africa was like, you can't eat food because there's kids in America starving.
Not wrong, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for the Great War. Not Great War. That's a much later war. The 7 Years' War. Um, some science at the end of this chapter. Who's the scientist who worked with both light and gravity in order to discover a constant set of physical laws? He is most well known for discovering gravity, although that's not quite how that went.
Isaac Newton.
Yes, Isaac Newton.
I think it's mostly the fact that they say he discovered gravity, but it's more he discovered things about gravity.
Yeah, like the gravitational laws and whatnot, and
Motion states.
how it works. Yeah, I mean, like one of the main parts of the gravitational laws is how planets move,
Yeah.
and that hurts my brain a little bit. Like I get it, I get what orbits are, but being able to do it in the 1600s with the technology you had back then, that's crazy. I don't think I had any more science. It was just Newton. Yeah. All right. With the advent of the Enlightenment, a new type of learned elite sprang forth despite not being born in the noble class. What was this new subclass of people called? So these were learned elite, typically in towns, which is where the name came from. And we're going to use the French one because it's awful. Good enough. Bourgeoisie.
Oh, that was nowhere near.
No, it's not. Another one that I definitely heard before I saw it written down. Yeah. Well, because that's what it was in England, was they were the burghers, because the towns were called burgs, you know, whatever burg. So the people in the towns were called burghers, no relation to the meat sandwich. Yeah, that was in Germany. Is this? I've got a bunch of names. I'm trying to remember if. No, that's Spirit of Laws, Wealth of Nations. I'm just going to have. We have a number of writers and philosophers, so we're just going to throw these in here. Oh no, just the one, because then the other ones are definitely later. Okay. Who was the English writer who believed mankind gravitated towards a social contract, regardless of whether or not there was a divinely appointed monarch? John Locke. He was British, therefore you got the name. It's not too bad. Not too bad. And we will move on to the other guys in just a moment. Let me just get these written down. Okay. There was a small republic. Actually, I mean, this question is as much as what's on the test. What unique republic, thanks to its small size and influx of people from all over Europe, was on the cutting edge of the early Enlightenment? They were top of the game when it came to tech. Small size, people from all over Europe. They were also pretty wealthy. The Dutch. Yeah, the Dutch were really on top of things early on. And then they just kind of got outperformed by England. Oh. Okay. They had time to think about things. Scotland had a very famous writer. Let me see how I have it written here. Scottish writer who wrote Wealth of Nations and is most famous for his idea of the invisible hand to guide the market. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Adam Smith. We talked about it in American history. In fact, I just talked about it in my previous class. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's what we want to do as a teacher. All right. Meanwhile, in France, who was born an aristocrat, called out the corruption of the court. He was responsible for a spirit of laws in which he called Catholics intolerant. Back to French names, sorry. He called the Catholics intolerant. Yes, he wrote Spirit of Laws. You know, that one's pretty close. Montesquieu. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Montesquieu.
She mumbled it.
That's not a typo.
Yeah, Montesquieu. It's French. Is all I gotta say about that. It's French.
I've heard Montesquieu. I don't know.
Yeah. I
Y'all, this is so bad. I forgot the E. The E.
I forgot. I was in a spelling bee once. I think it was like 6th or 7th grade, and I missed brimstone because I put in an extra E, Brime, and I will never forget it, and it has haunted me. So yes, I get exactly what you're talking about.
I literally wrote an essay
Wait,
about it.
what they have to spell pneumona or Michael Scotland so it's public entertainment. I can spell it. I remember specifically how to spell it.
Yeah, because it's that long.
Pneumona or the microscopic so it's public entertainment.
I'd have to break that down or write it out.
The trauma's so bad about the spelling bee. I wrote the English 102. I wrote an essay about it.
Oh no. Well, it's something you're passionate about. Let's see. Spirit of Laws. This man was a commoner, another Frenchman. Incredible mind and wit got him in rooms and palaces and cells and jails all across Europe. His main offense was being a deist. This guy was the commoner in France that was the philosophe. Yes, Voltaire. Yeah, Montesquieu and Voltaire are like the two main guys at the start of the Enlightenment. Yeah, that's what I have. I say that he had rooms and palaces and cells and jails because, like, Frederick the Great loved him. The French hated him. He went to jail a bunch, but he also, like, got to go and hang out with monarchs a bunch. So he got a lot of back and forth. But the main thing he got in trouble the most for was being a deist, which, again, is like the clockmaker god. Deist. Yeah, deist is just like real vague. Like, there's things we don't know. That's probably some kind of god. That's about it. We appreciate getting made. Everything else is up on us. You know, we got our own work to do. This man is not French. He's born in Geneva. Let's see. Found himself in a lot of trouble in France, oftentimes, due to his writings of the social contract and Emile. Oh, that's okay.
Social contract renewal,
Mm-hmm.
John Jacques Rousseau.
100% correct. Jean Jacques. Wait, I spelled that wrong. Jacques Rousseau. All right. I believe we're getting towards the end here. So we know Peter was pretty great. Russia also had a powerful Tsarina, who was this strong-willed and German woman who pushed Russian lands to the Black Sea and did her fair share of writing in the Enlightenment.
Is this about the woman who like followed the man with the star?
Yeah, he died.
Oh, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine. Do you remember which one? Because there was actually
I think the second.
yes, Catherine II, also known as Catherine the Great. This one's multiple choice, so you just need to know Catherine. But I just like to see what we remember. And again, yeah, she was technically German, but she ruled pretty well in Russia. Meanwhile, let's see. Which Prussian king was so wrapped up in the Enlightenment that he actually had a philosophe from France come and live at his palace outside Berlin? This was the guy that like invited Voltaire to come hang out and like live at his palace. This was the Prussian king that had a philosophe from France, which is to say Voltaire, come and live at his palace outside Berlin. Yes, Frederick the Great. Great slash the second.
I don't like this class right now. My other class, math.
Oh, math's rough.
I got no formal teachers for.
Yeah, I had a really good professor for math when I was in college, so I got lucky.
Our professor is nice, but he just like, he just do the work, we gotta put.
Yeah, that is rough.
He over there be, answering all the questions, I would be what? I'm
She
just
takes
waiting.
a long time for her to actually sit. She looks at her paper for like 5 minutes. So I just already do her so I can just sit there.
You think that class is easy?
The classes are okay. I don't like how she has the homework due at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Ew.
Because her software says due in a week. You click on it, it says due at 8 a.m. on a certain date. It doesn't
Yeah.
say due tomorrow. It says due in a week.
Well, I don't like that. Okay, so that is Frederick. We have another philosopher actually from Prussia. He argued that we cannot know any absolute truths, but we can find what is true for us as humans. Prussian philosopher. hmm No absolute truths, but we can find our own. Yes. Immanuel Kant, I believe, is the pronunciation because it's Prussian. It's not an oral test. It doesn't matter. All right. We are almost done, and I think I don't have any other questions, so we're just gonna continue going down here because it's mostly just, I mean, it's Enlightenment stuff, so it's all the same. Right. Which Austrian emperor had great plans for his nation, but was unable to get past his mother, the clergy, and the nobility to get as much done as he wanted?
He couldn't get past his mom.
Yeah, his mom was his co-regent. They were ruling at the same time, so he had to wait for her to kick the bucket before he could do anything. Yes.
I remember that because Joseph was like in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember which Joseph this was, by chance? Nah, this okay. This was multiple choice. Joseph the second. Actually, sorry, Joseph because Austrian, and they pronounce J's differently. Well, Austrian is German language, but anyway, yeah, Joseph the second. Again, this was multiple choice. As long as you know it's Joseph / Joseph, you'll be fine. Who wrote Robinson Crusoe, which was the first modern novel? Robinson Crusoe, Ribinson. Daniel Defoe. And not, no, it's not spelled the same way as Willem Dafoe. Because Willem Dafoe's Dafoe. Anyway, all right. I really should have just had another one for like specific individuals, but it's okay. Who was the main author of the French Encyclopedia? Was jailed many times for his writings. His work was banned more than a few times, to which he commented, a banned book is a read book, which is certainly not at all an important thing today in these free United States of America. So yeah, who was the main guy behind the French Encyclopedia is the main thing. The thing about French is you don't have to pronounce most of it. As far as it's Diderot from what I know. In fact, it's probably Denis Diderot. Just take out of that's what Noah Webster did with the British language, the English language. Just cut out a lot of yeah. Let's do something different. Yeah, why not? All right, one more. Who applied this rational and logical thought to gardening, suggesting a more wild and natural look for English gardens compared to the symmetrical and geometric French style? I just wanted to include this because I guess I still have hedge trauma. Yes. Yeah, he's regular old British name. Philip Miller. One L. Philip Miller. Yes. And then, of course, there's extra credit, but you know how that works. Well, you might. I remember that. I remember you drawing the turtle. You did give it. Yeah, no, you at least gave it a top hat.
Don't worry, I forgot you're in my other class. So this is, I think she's in my class. This sounds like my class.
Yes, I sit in the front, so I know I walked in there.
You sat in the very front.
I often did as well, so I didn't know anybody in my class. Oh, jeez.